Hello everyone, I'm Michael, and today, I'm going to tell you a story. What's something that a friend classmate did in high school that was seen as funny at the time, but you now realize was actually not okay. Story 1. Had a kid in my year who'd had a surgery that left a nerve bundle in his neck exposed. If pressed it would paralyze him. From memory, it was for spina bifida, and for some ungodly reason he told everyone. Certain boys took great pleasure in going downstairs behind him and pressing it, which completely paralyzed him for a few seconds, and he'd fall like a brick, usually onto whoever was in front of him. So dangerous. There were a fair few teeth knocked out because of this, his and other people's. It happened so much that in his third year the school installed an elevator, and you had to have a special key to use it. He got the only permanent issue key at that time. Story 2. In the 6th grade, I had a friend who was a troublemaker and a class clown. I've always hated going to my math class because my teacher was a cranky old lady who'd yell at you for the smallest things. Me being an 11-year-old, I actually had the worst anxiety just knowing I could be the next person yelled at in front of the class. The one thing that helped get through the year was that friend, cause I knew he'd always make jokes and have me almost in tears cause they were that funny. One day, when my teacher walked out to use the bathroom, that friend went over to her desk, picked up the mug she was drinking out of, and spat out the biggest loogie into it. We all saw it and just waited for her to come back. 10 minutes later, as she was just normally teaching, she picks up her mug and chugs it down. Everybody just starts laughing and giggling, including me, but nobody said anything when she questioned it. It was horrible, but I wasn't about to be the kid who snitched. Later on during the school year, I guess we had a day where it didn't start at the normal 7:30 a.m., but instead 10:30 a.m. But I didn't know, so I showed up really early. A bunch of kids didn't get the memo, so we were all just placed in the cafeteria until school actually started. Around 9ish, my math teacher noticed I was sitting out in the cold and invited me to her class where it was warm. When I got there, she let me work on my missed homework and even let me eat breakfast in her class. She asked me about home life, school life, if I had any friends, etc. She made me feel welcome. She then told me about her life, about her only son, about her husband who passed away from cancer 20 years back. She was very sweet. This was like back in 2008, and I think she was like 70 years old. I don't even know if she's still alive after all these years. But I wish I could go back and stop my friend from doing what he did. Story 3. Our religion teacher went into the cupboard for supplies. She was quite strict and not like, but now I'm an adult, I realize it doesn't excuse what happened next. The class clown snuck up and locked her in the cupboard. We all thought it was hilarious at the time, and we all left the class. She was in there for the rest of the class until another teacher found her in there crying an hour later. She took 2 weeks off after that. Story 4. Few messed up kids in my primary school lit a teacher's car on fire, just because she gave one of them failing grade on midterm. It wasn't one of the mean teachers. She was mostly nice to students. Cops got involved, but don't think they got punished accordingly. I know one of them was in and out of juvie already, and we're all around 13 to 14-year-old. One was even in Nazi shit. I know later on those kids got all tangled in dealing in robberies. Probably all went to jail at some point. Story 5. It wasn't in high school, but we all found out in high school. A boy named Hendo, his last name is Henderson, so that was his nickname, was drunk and told people how his brother once sucked his dick in the bath. Well, this apparently happened. I'm not sure if he did actually confess to this or not. So everyone used to sing Hendo loves the bath, Hendo loves the bath, and it was constantly chanted at him. He was popular, so he'd get annoyed, but nothing really ever happened. Story 6. In our school there was a teacher who had a mole, so of course the kids decided her nickname would now be Mole. She must have felt really hurt, as she eventually had the mole removed, leaving a little dent where it used to be. Did everyone then stop calling her names? Nope. They started calling her Hole instead. Story 7. This was in elementary. My dad bought a brand new bike for me, and I rode it to the park. And these older kids came up to me and asked if one of them could take it for a test drive. I said okay, and about 10 seconds in, I see the guy riding my bike being pushed off and my bike being stolen right in front of me. The older kids helped me look for my stolen bike, but growing up, I realized that they plotted this whole thing, and yeah, I basically gave my brand new bike away. Story 8. This actually happened to me. A group of 3 kids that used to be my friends invited me to come hang out with them at the lake. I had kind of been outcast from the group because I wasn't cool enough, or whatever, so I was eager to get together with them. When I got there, they had apparently stolen all of my school books out of my locker and threw them all in the lake right in front of me. They laughed hysterically and just left without saying a word. The next day, when I went to confront them about it at school, one of them had collected a Ziploc bag full of all 3 of their clipped fingernails and toenails and threw them in my face. Some got in my mouth, some got in my eyes, some got in my ear. I broke down crying and gagging. Nobody faced any consequences other than me because I pushed the kid away from me and he fell into a teacher carrying coffee. I was suspended for 2 days and had to pay for all the books that they destroyed because I had no proof that they were the ones that did it. I didn't do well in school and had anger problems, so the teachers assumed that I was the one who did it and tried to blame the other kids. Story 9. Had a classmate come in every so often with a bruise or small cut on her face or arm, but she was part of the punk scene, so I chalked it up to maybe hopping into mosh pits, although I had never heard her mention going to shows. At one point during our junior year of high school, she spoke to a few people sitting close, myself included, about going through the emancipation process of separating from her parents and living with a friend. It was also around this time that I noticed the bruises weren't occurring anymore. It took me a full 5 years to figure that one out. It's been a full 18 years since the incidents, and she's doing much better. Story 10. There was one kid in a group 3 years ahead of me in a religious school. He was super volatile, and it made him easy to pick on. I used to laugh at the jokes and his reaction too, although I did a couple times tell him they only do that because of his reaction. He would flip the fuck out, scream and cry. Turned out he was being raped and sodomized by the youth group leader regularly. No wonder the kid had issues. I feel so bad for him now. Story 11. I had this teacher whose breath was horrible. Like someone literally took a crap in her mouth. Horrible. Anyway, this one kid left a big bottle of mouthwash on her desk when she wasn't looking one day. The whole class was laughing. Then she turned around and saw it, and you could see her kind of die inside. She went on to tearfully explain to the class how she had some kind of an intestinal issue that she has been suffering with and that she realizes her breath is bad. Then she excused herself from the class for the remainder of the period. Now, as a kid, I thought that was hilarious until she started to cry. And how she was able to continue teaching us monsters after that is not something I will ever understand. And if that had been my wife or mother, I would have encouraged her to quit. Story 12. I remember having what was called the man or mouse test. Basically, guys would take one of those big pink erasers and start going to work on their arms, and the one who lasted the longest was the real man. Plenty of bloody and scabbed up arms around school. I am not ashamed to say that I was a mouse because I never participated. There were plenty of other instances that ranged from questionable to outright dangerous. Bottle rockets being shot down the hallway, filling milk jugs with acetylene and lighting them up with a torch, damaging the brand new school bus with a shot put, etc. High school was basically a shit show. Story 13. We had a very attractive male student teacher when we were in high school, and the degree to which some of the girls were flirting with him got out of control. This guy was hot, tall, model looks and such, and what started with a bunch of girls openly gawking at him and agreeing he was sexy escalated. I remember feeling genuinely bad for this guy. He just wanted to teach. He seemed to really want to do a good job, but he ended up getting sexually harassed like crazy. In the end, I think he got transferred within the district to a middle school or something, and I remember the principal ranting and screaming about how inappropriate some of the girls had been. Story 14. I had a well-loved teacher in high school who had some sort of intense aversion to glitter. So, obviously a bunch of the shithead seniors decided to prank him by dumping bags of glitter all around his classroom. The poor man actually dropped to the ground and started sobbing. A lot of the kids thought he was doing it to be dramatic or funny, but it was very clear, especially in retrospect, that he was having a full-blown panic attack. I hope those shithead kids learned something from that. Story 15. In the 5th grade, we had a random urinal and sink shitter. This kid would shit in the sinks and urinals in a couple of the boys' bathrooms for a few weeks. It got so bad that the staff teachers had to take kids in groups at pre-designated times to go use the bathrooms. While they waited outside, the kid was in my class and got caught because he was in my class and decided to shit in a urinal while in this group setting. He laughed hysterically the whole time and thought we would all think it was funny. I mean, we did think it was funny, but it was annoying we had to go in groups. He got suspended for a bit because of that, and then those incidents never happened again. Story 16. I had a teacher, our class tutor, who was lovely, but she was tired of several of our classmates acting like little shit. One day, during our home tutor class with her, several of them just kept messing about, picking on her and full-on blanking her when she spoke to them, acting as if she wasn't there. They found it hilarious. Me and my friends were quite close with her, so we stayed after that class and asked if she was okay. She looked at us and just started crying, saying how she's so tired of it and how they make her not enjoy teaching anymore, and she'd been teaching over 20 years. The next day, we actually told the class about it, and their faces dropped. I think for once they realized how far they had pushed her. I felt so bad for her. Story 17. I went to a Catholic school where a bunch of priests lived in a rectory on the campus. There was one kid in my class who was always getting in trouble and forced by this one particular priest to go do chores in the rectory. We would joke and make fun of how the kid was probably getting sexually abused by the priest. The kid was fairly popular and would get mildly annoyed with these jokes, but also kind of laugh along with them. Well, it turned out the kid really was getting sexually abused by the priest. I think the priest ended up dying in jail. Story 18. A kid announced to all the other students that a particular teacher had titty cancer, saying it in a funny and mocking tone. And everyone laughed and laughed because the kid said titty and they were regarded as the funny kid at school. We only realized it was bad when the teacher heard it and broke down crying. We didn't realize we were making fun of her dying. I still carry second-hand guilt about that one. Added to clarify, since some of you can't handle my use of second-hand guilt, I didn't join in with the other students because I thought it was wrong to make fun of someone, but I was also stupid and didn't connect their making fun of her to her potential demise, so I didn't stand up to the other students. I have second-hand guilt because I wish I had been more emotionally mature to understand what was happening and emotionally fortified to stand up for that teacher. Story 19. Not high school, but primary. We had an asthmatic teacher, and those green board with chalk sticks. Once we found out she wouldn't have class if we defilled the class with the powder by beating the erasers in each other. She had to move. She would have crisis every day. We were sad. Everybody actually liked her. Story 20. In high school, one of the students was having an affair with the vice principal. The rumor is, on the day she turned 18, he served his wife with divorce papers and they got married after she graduated. Everyone knew. It was the worst-kept secret in the school. Nothing ever happened to him. I believe they both moved across the country and later got divorced. It seems she got too old for him. All of us dumb high schoolers thought it was funny. The administration knew and didn't care. Her parents knew and didn't care. And this was the early O's, so it's not like it was really acceptable back then either. But it definitely was not okay. Story 21. Grade 8. A grade 7 pissed in our grade's autistic student's shoes. At first, I remember chuckling at the thought of two shoes having pee in them, which I laughed at in their own exclusive right. But as I viewed the obviously slightly bigger picture that didn't take a rocket scientist to see, it just made me sick. The kid didn't have the sense to stop before putting on his shoes. He just did it and then freaked after they were on. Now, whether or not it was intentionally directed at him is technically unknown, but it seemed too coincidental. I will say, however, that if the culprit was just cherry-picking victims, he stepped on a fucking landmine. Story 22. I did this, but in hindsight, not funny at all. We had a friend that was always asking for a bite of your food or a drink of your drink. So, I bought syrup of ipecac, cause it's projectile vomiting, generally used for poison control, and poured it in a can of soda. And when he asked for a sip, I told him he could finish it. He ended up vomiting on the subway for an hour trying to get home. One of my regrets in life. Story 23. The more popular guys in my class made a ranking list of the hottest girls in our grade level. It ended up getting late. Found out a bit later the girl who was ranked dead last spent a few hours crying by herself in the bathroom. Story 24. We had a teacher in middle school that served in a war. I can't remember which war, but he saw some combat and it had affected him. Some of our more asshole classmates thought it was hilarious to bring snaps to school. Like the ones you get on the 4th of July that look like a fat sperm and you throw down on the ground to make a snapping sound. Every time that poor man turned around, they would start throwing those snaps because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, he would go nearly full-blown flashback and hide, nearly crying under his desk from enemy fire. Some of our classmates, including the ones who did it, thought it was hilarious and no one would stand up to them cause those kids were the real white trash, country bumpkin sort of terrors that would seriously hurt you if you crossed them. The principal didn't really do anything about it other than urging the teacher to retire.